Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is session number 9, I believe.
Yep.
We have 3 more to go. So welcome everyone, and thank you so much for coming back again. And we look forward to having a very robust hour with you. And so without further ado, I will turn it over to Dr. Vargas, who will wow us with his great insights. And
Great.
please, as you're on mute, but please ask questions and ask questions in the mute or, small groups. So just ask questions directly and let's just have some fun and make this as interactive as possible. Okay, Roberto, off to you, sir.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dennis. And just double checking, can you hear me and you can see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Great. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome session 9. This time around, we will be talking about a little bit of team dynamics and facilitating PI. I alluded to this a little bit last time. As I was mentioning, there is this piece where certainly during the course of the sessions, we've been learning about various tools, and I want to take the opportunity to bring it all together, make it more tangible if it seems a little bit, stratified over too long of a time. All right, so let's jump into it. Let's see. Okay, so session outline. We will be doing a little course. Be kind, please rewind. And I see. We'll be talking about phases of team development. And we'll be jumping through an example of a PI session agenda. And then walking through, we'll begin walking through what's known as a storyboard. And what does that mean for a series of tools and having something at your hands to help you think through, what do I do next? Okay, great. So let's do a little review from last time. As you might remember, we talked about human-centered design. It is a model that has 4 phases to it. And those phases are understand, reframe, imagine, and build and test. And that's what you'll see in that top left section. So little reminder. So you're understanding what that person in front of you has in their brain when they have maybe some type of issue at hand, and you really want to ask a series of questions. And these are done through what we shared was an interview. And that will bring me to the bottom right section of the screen, which says interviewing with open-ended questions. And those are really the best way to truly dive in deep with that individual. And so truly understanding, can you tell me more about how did that make you feel? Tell me about a time, right? I won't go through all of them, but they all are these open-ended questions that help to really pull information from that individual who may be, if it's a customer, if it's a patient, who may have not received the service that they really truly wanted. And then we talked about with reframe, we said, okay, you got your information, and now you need to kind of synthesize it, right? You need to start thinking, okay, what I hear, whether you want to, maybe it was a complaint, maybe it was a suggestion, however it may be framed, you heard that information from that individual that you were just interviewing. And now you need to think about, okay, how do I switch it to how can I make this more of a positive improvement kind of project? And you have to start thinking, well, if there was a number of ideas that were provided to me, I need to now break them up into chunks, maybe bucket them into piles where like ideas are put together. And this could happen when you are interviewing multiple people. And you have a lot of ideas that are coming your way, and some of them are similar in nature. And so if you bucket them together, that will kind of help your brain focus on, okay, what are the general themes that are happening? And then we talked about imagine, where you're now thinking about the potential solutions for almost like an intervention. And once you get that potential intervention, just like a lot of other models that we had spoken about, what is your idea? What is your potential solution to test? And then you're going ahead and designing that test and and testing it forward. The top right picture was meant to be actually really understanding the first phase, which is understanding phase, where you have people who have issues that they're trying to resolve, and they find some unconventional ways of fixing and resolving those issues. Hair, you want to put your hair up, don't have a clip, guess what? I'm going to put a pencil through it, and so on and so forth. I have a rocky a cabinet that might not be aligned, so I need to wedge something under it. So someone had put a hammer, or we've seen that dinner tables or lunch tables. We will put maybe a piece of napkin folded up underneath the leg of that table to help it from rocking. Okay. So for today, as I mentioned, I wanted to bring it back into this facilitation frame where we're talking about, so you put a team together, and these are typically people who are associated with that area, or sometimes you might want fresh eyes, and you have a team coming together that are not associated with that workflow or that area. But however that team is built, that is now your team. All right, you may be a part of it, you may be helping to facilitate it, but there are some pieces of that team that certainly need to be acknowledged, and I have certainly seen this over a course of time with teams I've been involved with. And there are these phases, and so Bruce Tuckman had put together this kind of theory on phases of team development, and how he places it. You have your y-axis that talks about team effectiveness. You have your x-axis that talks about time of team development. So that first phase, you can see this kind of S-shaped curve. And the idea is you have a team that's forming. And I know there's a lot of words at the bottom here, and I'll kind of rephrase it in my own words here, but you think about it as a team coming together. And I would say most of the time, people are hopefully thumbs up, ready to make some certain change happen. And so there's some good energy kind of coming in, right? And however, just like maybe you who have jumped into a team that you may not know those other people, you also don't know each other. You may know the work. So you're trying to understand each other's little characteristics and little nuances with one another. What does my relationship look like with this individual who maybe I did or did not work with before, who may or may not be, let's say, quote unquote, above me in some certain chain of command, or below me in some certain chain of command. But you're trying to figure out, how do I work with this individual? How do I work with these teams? Okay, so hopefully, high note, there's a little bit of caution. And then there's this phase called storming. And when I've led these week-long events, I swear it's always day 2, maybe day 3, where something happened. Okay, there's a difference in opinion that comes about. There's a different way of working versus that individual versus this individual. I'm glad I see you smiling, Dennis. I know you've seen it. I think I've hardly gone through a team improvement where something doesn't happen, and tears can literally flow. Letty, I'm sure. Yes. And Nicole, I think that's you. Yes, it's a lot. It's a lot to take in, and as a facilitator, you got to be able to navigate these challenges. So there may be disagreements, there may be power struggles, there may be challenges, and it's really, really, really important as a facilitator, as even just a participant in the team, that you're supporting that conflict resolution. You're really trying to build trust and come back to why we're there in the first place. Yes, there may be differences of opinion, there's differences of work styles, but what are we trying to achieve here? How can we get back to the work? We're all in this together, we're one team. All right, and then fingers crossed, you get past that and you get into that norming phase. And this is when, okay, differences have been resolved, and now guess what? We are a team. We are understanding each other. We're understanding pros and cons, weaknesses and strengths, and we get what we need to do. there's a rhythm. There's almost this rhythm that you feel with a team. And as you build that rhythm, you're going for it, you're doing it. And that's in that performing stage. And you're really maybe day 2, day 3, I'm sorry, day 3, day 4, there's a set schedule, there's set expectations, and everything is just happening. And sometimes if you have a kind of capped period of time, sometimes a little bit of urgency comes into play because you all know, whoa, we only have a finite amount of time that we were allocated to do this work. And yes, we're doing well, and we have to maybe do even weller. We have to do better. Maybe we have to bark a little faster, and so the performing is really, really happening. And then eventually you get to that adjourning phase where there's motions with a team of hopefully victory, and we can maybe let off some of that anxiety with that high pace performing phase. But there may be, have to acknowledge there may be some sadness. There may be a loss of, wow, we worked so well. We recognized we got through the storming. We're able to work on a team. We got a lot of great things done. And this is a time in our period of life maybe we will reflect on and think about. So it's a lot to take in. And again, whether you're facilitating, you've been asked to be at the front of the class and have that conversation, or whether you're a team member, I think it's really, really important to recognize that these are natural stages of team development. And it's kind of hard to not not recognize them, and so see what you can do to participate in resolution for sure. How move people forward. Certainly shorten up the storming period as if you can, but certainly recognize sometimes you can't get past it, and you just need to have those crucial conversations. Okay. All right. So I had worked with a team recently, and we were talking about, okay, well, what does it look like? I mentioned PI sessions or team togetherness. And I had mentioned, well, I have been a part of teams that had 1 week full time or almost full time to work on a certain project. But sometimes you don't get that time. Sometimes you get 1 hour at a time, you get 2 hours. This team here had 4 hours or so, I guess 5 hours. And so I'm going to walk through this more in detail, but I want to share, we put together an agenda. It's something to set expectations for the team so they know what to expect, right? And this is part of facilitation. You are saying, hey, everybody, so this is the topic at hand. And we talked about charters, we talked about goals, and some stuff may not be completely designed and developed out yet, but it's important to get it out there as best as you can to say, hey, this is where we're at with our understanding of what this problem is, and we're going to come together and start working on it. And you say, here's an agenda. And again, depending on how much time you have to shorten this agenda, you have to make it longer. But again, I'll flow through this more in detail in coming slides, but you'll see, okay, welcome and introductions, who's on that team? What are the goals, right? What is that high level aim that we're all here for? What are the different roles that we are in and why we are there and participating on this project? Let's start together to start putting what we know on paper. And there are various tools that you can use for putting information, getting information out of everyone's heads and putting it on paper. One can be a process map. We'll talk about some others, SciPoc, and it's meant to help the team somewhat visualize and contribute together known information. And then from that, you're transitioning, and hopefully you're all kind of remembering the various models that we talked about, right? Understanding and discovering and investigating. And then you're trying to then figure out, okay, I know information, and now I need to start thinking about why did that certain issue happen? Why is it in that current state? So you're identifying different problems, and you're using that affinity diagram. That was the diagram I had just shown with the human-centered design, where you're bucketing potential issues. And great, make sure you give people a break because this is tiring work. This is if food's available, if people are willing to contribute towards a potluck, I'm all about it. Keep the energy going, maybe get some sugar in there, coffee, whatever it may be. Eat healthy, of course. We want to promote healthy eating. And then you get back into it. And you're maybe thinking about linking certain problems to process steps. As I mentioned, we just did a process map, right, earlier. So what if we went ahead and starred, or we put some arrows to some problem areas so we know where exactly are we talking about when I say this issue exists? Okay, well, where amongst the workflow does that issue exist? And then we start going into, well, let me transform this problem into certain maybe drivers. Maybe you can think about it as, and we'll learn about this other tool, Fishbone. What are the causes for this problem? Again, I'll go in more detail, but you start asking why is this problem existing? Okay. More to come, but I'll stop there for this particular team and their session. But you can see how it's kind of packaged, right? You can see how there's this flow of logic that helps bring a team together and framing it so that they understand what they're doing right now and what's to come, so that they don't you may have some very excited, energetic folks who want to go straight into the solution, who want to say, this is what I think should happen, and set the stage. There's a whole flow of, we really need to understand what we're trying to achieve here that ultimately will bridge towards potential solutions that we'll test. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is now dive into storyboard time. By the way, any comments, questions? I don't know. I want to make sure that's all open, but certainly when we talk about team dynamics, when we talk about this flow, certainly, can anybody relate to maybe being a part of a team and having maybe seen some of this phases? Does anyone have any shares?
I'll share. So I've been on teams where there was really strong and effective leadership, and it really helped smooth out that storming and get to the norming and performing really well. And also on the contrary, I've been on teams where the leadership was contributing to the storming and it was not a pretty sight. And so I want to call that out, that like leadership can really make a difference, and everybody can contribute to that leadership, right? We can all own leadership of ourselves and contributing to the accomplishment of the overall goal. So, but I think that that's an important factor.
That's an excellent point, Nicole. I've seen that as well, and some of those, as I mentioned, this term crucial conversation. If whether you're a team member, whether it's a facilitator, or you're a team member, you want to maybe say something to the facilitator. Sometimes there needs to be some crucial conversations with that leader, where sometimes we need to ask some folks their involvement with letting some of this performance improvement happen. And there's always a little bit of this dichotomy, this differences in opinion, and certainly even at that level, conflict resolution is needed. So great take, and thank you for sharing. I think I see one more.
Yeah, Melinda?
Hi, yeah, Melina, can you hear me? Great.
Yes.
I actually have more of a question, not a comment.
Yeah.
So this is the first time I've actually seen like the phases of team development, this I guess this tool, which is really great. And I just kind of want to know, do you ever see situations where maybe the storming and norming are flipped, where like you're going into a situation and like it seems really cohesive, and then maybe storming is just coming down the line as you're like going through I don't know, whatever project is, and like everyone seems just like on board and together, and then there's like conflict that like comes up later. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I think I've seen that. I mean, I think what I would still say that even in that forming can feel like norming because you have not yet had that time together
Okay,
to get to that storming phase.
got
You
it. Okay.
you are still maybe being cautious with bringing out certain differences of opinion yet, and so it's coming.
Ah, so it's
And yeah, everybody's on their best behavior. And it might last a little longer until something touches them personally a different way or irks them. And that's when you'll see it come out. And like Roberto said, it
Mhm.
might come out in a lot of different ways. It might be resistance. It might be the same person talking all the time in the meetings about something else.
Mhm.
It might be them blowing you off and not coming to the meetings. It's a whole world of
Dynamic.
different ways how they're going to actually express, I'm not on board with something.
That makes sense. Okay, so like almost faux norming in the form.
Yeah, yeah. So, and it is not a linear process. You know, they might feel like, you know, hey, we're forming and we're storming and we're norming, and then oops, another issue occurs and you go back to the storming.
That makes sense. Okay,
Yeah.
just wanted
Yeah.
to get some feedback. Yeah, thank you. That
Yeah,
makes-
no, great question, and yes, I like that faux reference there. That's absolutely, absolutely. You know, I have had people come in maybe feeling like they're storming immediately. Maybe maybe they were voluntold to participate, and um, and that can create some conflict immediately. So okay, okay.
Or you got to work with new people to the team, and there is a little conflict around really who's in charge and whose
Mhm.
baby is this, and you know, you're stepping in my sandbox, and it's a whole, you know, bucket of worms sometimes.
Absolutely, absolutely. I feel like yeah, strap in and get ready. If as a facilitator, you kind of wait and see as things design, and you hope kind of for the best as you put in some standard structure, and then it's just react. Okay. Well, thank you for that. Anyone else? Crystal, were you gonna say? Did you have something? No. Okay. All right. I'll continue on here. Thanks, everybody. All right. So storyboards. Concept here is we've taught a lot of tools here, right? We have gone through quite a bit, and a storyboard is essentially putting it all together. And for us, we're using a PowerPoint format, and it's a good tool to use for help guiding someone through performance improvement, but it also has many tools in it that you may or may not use or need to use at any given time. The storyboard that I'll be presenting has all the tools, or not, well, the tools that I've kind of bucketed together. Not every single tool under the sun, because there's many. And it's meant to, so it can help guide, but it's not meant to be, I need to do every single slide or else I've done this wrong. And it's I think most importantly maybe not most importantly, but at the time of presentation and when you're wrapping up your project and you need to present, this is a great tool to use because this will help the audience to understand what did you do? And it has this very nice flow and fashion of showcasing, just like we talked about with the various methods and models of how did you get from A to B to C. Okay. So I mentioned various models, and I may switch this up. I may switch things around with how I term certain pieces of the process. But the real takeaway that I want you to have here is not necessarily the word at hand on a given step, but what does that step mean? So literally the other night, Yes, working on this at night. The night I decided I need a better acronym for this thing. And we can use other acronyms. Again, it doesn't quite matter. But so I said, great, learn, listen, evaluate, apply, replicate, nurture. Fantastic, right? But the main takeaways I want for you is there's phases here. There's steps. That first step has to do with what are we trying to accomplish? There's some form of why are we even here? And so we talked about various tools, and we'll go through these some of these tools. But this slide is meant to help the audience and with you as the person involved with this PI project. Great. First phase, this is what I do. I need to understand why I'm even here, and then using various tools. So we went through and walked through a charter. Okay. We went into detail and talked about all the different pieces associated with a charter and the needs for a charter, because it'll help you, the team, your stakeholders, the executive sponsor understand and bless, essentially approve what work is about to happen. There's full alignment, or at least understanding of what you're about to put your time into and why, and other people's time. So I'll just say it out. Timing, purpose, we talked about measurement, who's in the team, what are we working on, what are we not working on, what are potential benefits to even doing this work, and maybe initially, and this is something a charter will continually be revised, but maybe initially, what are the thoughts on some activities that may be involved here? Not necessarily solutions to test, but just general overall activities. So continuing that flow, and this should, we just talked about a potential agenda, so that will flow with this, but this is now hopefully connecting that agenda with some visuals here. Then you're talking about a process map, and you're saying, well, what can we put some of our shared understandings together? And we talked about a value stream map, and how a value stream map is a little bit of a process map and more robust. The process map is located right here in the middle. And then there's other pieces to it that talks about information flow, that talks about timeline, and we talked a whole lot. And this is where I know Dennis covered for me, so thank you, Dennis, who jumped in and shared about lead time and cycle time and wait times, and various tools and methods for collecting that information, and various lean know-hows and how to apply it to building this map. This is the tool we didn't talk about yet. This is a fishbone. This tool, think of this as a trying to understand the problem at hand. So you identify what your problem is. Okay, what was that goal / problem? Why are we here? Why are we working together? And you start. This is where I said, asking why is super, super important in using this tool, because you're saying, well, why is this problem even existing? And we talked about buckets and themes. Well, and that's where these large colors, different colors here, can come into play. Maybe there's a theme associated with people, associated with your problem. Maybe there's something associated with equipment or processes like workflows, or different materials, actual physical materials, or the environment at hand. These are all themes, and again, they're not locked in. You can change it, absolutely, if you find that there's other themes that exist, but these are some common themes that typically come about. And the idea is you're able to put below details that flow into that theme. So what about people is contributing towards this thing? What about equipment? Is it that there's a certain equipment that remains on a given, let's say, a hospital unit, and it's outdated and it's just taking up room, or someone put it in the hallway and we know we shouldn't have things in the hallway and it's just been sitting there because X and Y reason. Processes, so on and so forth. So the fishbone, and the name comes from there's Ishikawa. There's a number of names for this tool, but you can almost see it resembles the head of a fish and bones of the fish. So fishbone diagram. And so you're putting together the problems, you're putting together themes, and it's helping the team consider, oh, you know what, I can contribute towards that theme by saying X, Y, and Z thing. Again, a shared tool for visualization and understanding. So as I mentioned, we're still in that bucket, right? We can go back. We're still in that bucket of listen. We are listening. We're certainly asking questions, right? Why? But vast majority of this timeline, you are listening. If you're helping to facilitate this conversation, you are listening a whole lot and taking down notes. Hence, you can see where this comes into play. I'm listening to others and figuring out how do we want to come together to achieve something. I'm listening from others and asking questions to put together a map. I am, again, another map. I'm listening about problems and maybe asking additional whys, why, so I can truly understand what's happening. And of course, the people in the room who may be a part of the actual process, the workflow, whichever it may be that you're working on, those people can be customers. But more likely than not, you can also get other people contributing towards this by doing those interviews. And we heard that from the human-centered design. You're asking various people who are impacted by this problem or this area of improvement. It may be patients and family. It may be a clinician of some sorts. It may be the operational manager over the area. And it could very well be the executive sponsor. So what are these, we classify them also as stakeholders. So what are these people saying? And you want to say what during this interview, so what are their needs, right? What are their wants? Why do they help? If you're talking about the executive sponsor, why do they want this team to come together? What do they ultimately want to achieve? And then your goal is, just like we talked about human-centered design and that translation and that flip of here's an affinity diagram I put into themes, but now I need to start translating it into something else. That's where this other column comes into play. You're saying, okay, well, they want X, Y, and Z to happen. Well, in order for that to happen, or what that really means is they want a different workflow design. They want to consider about changing up people's roles and responsibilities. They want to purchase new equipment and it hasn't been purchased yet in order for that thing to happen, right? What does that actually mean that may be more tangible than the initial interview response that you got? All right, great. So we listened. Awesome. And there are a number of other tools that can be used. I'm happy to speak through some of these. We won't go into detail about them, but there are a number of ways of achieving this stage. But you're listening, you're collecting of information. Okay. And next, you'll get into this evaluate phase. Again, many different ways you can name this thing, but at heart, how will we know that a change is an improvement? This is a little bit more of that transition from, okay, I just heard a bunch of what this problem is, and now I need to start digesting it. That's that evaluation, that's that analysis. You're trying to understand, what am I doing with this information? How can I adjust some things so that I can make it make sense, so that when I am ready to test, I have it, it's formed. I understand it. I could potentially teach back. I can tell someone else about what I'm trying to do here. But it takes steps to get there. And that's what this step is about. So how will we know that a change is an improvement? And yeah. So one way, driver diagrams are this transition in thought where now you're talking about contributing factors. Very similar, I would say, with the fishbone diagram, just I would say for me, there's a little bit of a spin. I think at least the way how I use them, a little bit of a difference in spin. Fishbone, I think of more as a retro review, a thought of why is this thing happening, maybe poorly. So maybe like a negative frame versus driver diagrams. I almost have this positive spin to it. So what is contributing towards achieving my goal versus what's contributing towards the problem? So very, very similar. So what in the driver diagram, we have spoken about this before. Again, you have your left-hand side, you have your measure, you have your goal, you have your SMART goal. We mentioned that. You have your major contributing areas. Remember, primary drivers. You have, well, what's contributing towards those primary drivers, and those are secondary drivers. And you have, okay, well, secondary drivers, and you have your identified actions to work on. These are your potential solutions to test. And if you remember, I had this whole thing about growing a tomato plant, and that was my overall goal. And then I needed to grow a tomato plant, and I needed resources and other things, a good environment that has some good sunshine. And then I said, well, what does it take to get those resources? And I needed seeds and whatnot and soil. And then I said, well, how do I get those things? And how do I get those things? What could it be my actions? So I needed to get some seeds. Okay, I'm going to do that by going to the store or asking someone who has some great tomatoes that they grow at home, and I would love some seeds from them. Soil, maybe I need to learn about what goes into soil and good properties, and then buy the right mix or grab from a friend, whatever it may be, and attain, right? That's your action. So driver diagrams help to spin that frame with, okay, what am I going to do? What do I need to do to achieve this? Versus the driver diagram, the fishbone diagram didn't necessarily what we're going to do, but it classifies things of how are they contributing, how are they adding to that, I guess, contributing towards that problem. But yes. Okay. All right. So again, evaluating, there's this now we get in, for me, some fun stuff with measurement. This is where you could say the tires meet the road. Okay, there's no once you all kind of agree upon how we measure things, sure, other measures can be considered over time. Of course, everybody's learning over time, but the hope is that you have a team who considers, how do I know something is going well or not? Is there some sort of graph? Is there a certain count or number that goes up or down that's good or bad? That's where this information goes. And we talked about the different kinds of measures that speaks to, right, your overall outcome measure. That's your big aim, your SMART goal. And we said, great, that's our guiding light. That's what we're trying to achieve. That's why we're here in the first place. And then you have other measures such as processing measures, and those speak to, well, what is gonna, if I do these little things will impact the overall outcome measure, the overall outcome goal. And so if I achieve all these various process measures, they're going to contribute. And then we said balancing measure, and we said, well, what do I want to make sure that it may be overlapping with the project that I'm working on? There's something that is associated or closely associated to my project, but it's not a part of my project. And I want to make sure I don't intentionally or accidentally mess it up. I had shared some examples there of, I had worked on a project with the lab, and there was a certain specimen collection thing that was happening, and I was during the course of this improvement, I was asking the lab to do a few different things. A lab at the hospital, by the way, who processes specimens. And so I was asking them to do their work a little differently, but I wanted to make sure that I didn't accidentally impact this other workflow that the lab does, and it had to do with this thing called stat labs and reporting critical values. It had to, there was labs that a clinician had said, you know what, I think there's an issue here with the patient and I need this information as quick as possible. I did not want to disrupt that because my product had nothing to do with that. But because I was asking the same staff who works on that critical value thing, who also works on this other thing that was with my project, I didn't want to accidentally negatively impact this other important process. So I said, great, that's going to be my balancing measure. I want to make sure that process, however I may define it, is running well, and I'm going to track it over time. And as long as that data seems to be, there's no special causes, it's just there's very little variability. Great. I didn't touch it. I'm good. No one can get mad at me, right? So here's where you're listing, and it's important that some of these key pieces that you put together as a team is, sure, the first column is measure. You have a general understanding of what that measure is. You can brand it, you can name it. We are looking at this whatever it may be. I think I've been using it often. Whatever it may be. So operational definitions, you want to put in the more meat and potatoes. What exactly does that measure mean? If you're talking about, I think I have used the patient falls, probably not a good example, but we don't want patient falls. We don't want patients to fall in the hospital, right? That's a bad thing. We want people to be cared for, and we want to ensure that there's no accidental falling over. Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, it could mean, because of my project and the scope I'm working on, it could mean I'm only talking about patients on this area of the hospital, or I'm only talking about this certain service line. I'm only talking about during this certain shift. Of course, we never want this stuff to happen, but maybe I have a specific measurement of this thing that I want to achieve. So you're putting it there in an operational definition. Often there's a numerator, there's a denominator of some sorts. And as I mentioned, I already walked through outcomes and process and balancing. And then also important, so important, is your collection plan. Because just because a team defines a measure and they go through sometimes it can be tedious to agree upon an operational definition. It's almost like, so what? Unless someone is assigned to help collect that information in a certain frequency, a certain way, to then deliver back to the team. Because, right, say what you want, you can agree upon what you want, but unless it's actually there's actually a plan for collecting that, it goes by the wayside. And I've certainly been a part of teams where I know early on where that wasn't defined. And then we're left looking at each other maybe the next day, and we're saying, great, so we did the measures. Did you bring it? Did you look into it? Did you translate? Did you download that report? Did you and it doesn't happen. And then time is wasted, and then we need to move forward. So it's really important to say, how are you getting that information? If it's information that someone needs to go and see and collect manually, if it's information that has to be downloaded from some sort of report or tool, and then how often are we talking about? How often does the team want to see the data? How often is the team expecting improvement to happen? Do I want data daily, hourly, weekly, monthly? I mean, hopefully not that far out, but you're coming together to have a set specific frequency of how often do we want to see that data. Breather. Okay. All right. In this part of the storyboard, now we've set, right? We've set the measures, we've set what are the specifics for what we want to review over time. It's very detailed, fantastic. And now we need to go ahead and showcase it. This is where you want to, as I mentioned, teams need to be able to review that data. So in your slide deck, you want to see some data. you want to, we've talked about various kinds of forms of information and data. We talked about run charts. We talked about control charts. And there's some other items that we'll actually review next time, other kinds of charts. So you want to have some charts that people can look at. And one important piece I want to mention is that word that says baseline. So, right, where are we at in our process? Okay, we listened, we attained information, we were able to write it down, have a shared understanding of the issue at hand. Right now we're evaluating, so now we're thinking through, okay, what are the additional problems? Why did that problem happen? And so we talked about measures and being able to measure that problem. And we need to know before we even touch anything, before we actually start trying to improve something, make something better, we need to have a baseline, a set of baseline data. This is going to let us know if we actually made any change or difference whatsoever. So we need to define, okay, if I'm working, again, it can, depending on how often you're reviewing data, maybe I want last week's data, maybe I want a month's worth of data, maybe I want, caveat, more data is better. Certainly, if you go way beyond where it seems like, I think you'll get that gut sense of why are we looking 5 years ago when teams have transitioned over, maybe new resources have become available, maybe different patient populations or customers have transitioned over, and it doesn't make sense to quite talk about data that long ago. It's not really applicable. So there's a decision on, well, how much baseline data do we need? And typically we say, we want enough points to be able to generate these charts. So run charts and control charts needing 11 points or 12 points. And so we want enough information to understand what's happening. And this will help us to, as a team, come together and saying, got it. Okay, we know it's not, we came together for a reason because there's a problem. And we now know, because we agreed upon a certain measure, we know how things were going definitively, at least for this specific measure, because we can see it right here. Okay, let's say on a control chart, down is bad. Okay, I can see data points progressively getting lower and lower and lower on my run chart. Down is bad. Okay, yes, down is bad. This project isn't doing well. We need to do something about it. So before we do anything, we need to at least appreciate and understand what was happening before we even started. And there it is. So that was what I'm going to stop for today. And I think so. Yep. What we'll go into next time is apply. And I'll continue on with the storyboard. You got something, Dennis?
No, this is great, Roberto, as always. And why don't you share with the others? You made some really just fantastic points. Getting that baseline data is like the biggest hurdle. But if you don't have it, it's no way you can say that you made an improvement. So that's probably going to be your number one thing when you start any team project. So as improvement people, just say, hey, weigh in as heavily as possible. They actually say, okay, hey, I know it's tough to get, maybe. I know it might be, 100, it might not be 100% perfect, maybe, but stress as much as possible. How might we get that baseline data to start? And it's just so easy to say, okay, hey, it's not available. We don't have it. Let's continue on with our improvements, and we'll try some PDSAs, and we'll do some fish bones, and we'll really try to understand the environment. And at the end of the day, the most senior leaders and executives are going to say, well, what did you really improve and where was it before? And that's where they're always going to look at that data piece. So whatever it takes, just try your best to always get that baseline data. And that's all I want to share, though, Roberto, because I thought you laid it out really nicely.
Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone have any and maybe I know there's a number of new folks to performance improvement, but I'm really curious, has anybody had have used some of these tools that I had mentioned today? And I would love to know about your experience or maybe even challenges with using them.
Is anybody currently working on a project?
I'm at the very beginning of oh, I see Nicole's hand up. You can go, Nicole, if you want.
I was just saying I'm working on multiple projects.
Okay. Have you found yourself using any of these tools?
Just starting to.
Just starting? So maybe Charter?
Yes. And soon some driver diagrams.
Maybe I missed that first one. So Charter and Driver, was there another one?
Oh, no, just saying soon, probably some driver
Okay.
diagrams.
Soon. Great. Great. Any challenges with coming together with the charter? I know the first step is usually a hard one because you're getting opinions together and really figuring out the focus of your work. But what have you found? Easy, hard, challenges?
Oh, always an adventure.
Yeah.
Getting everybody on the same page.
Mm.
But
Are
goals.
you? Have you had the opportunity to maybe share the charter with others? Maybe I would almost even say. Okay, so I am perfectly fine with being I feel like the guinea pig with some things or saying the wrong thing, and as long as I get the information out there and so other people can reflect and think about it. So one of the maybe some of the advice I have is put stuff on paper and send it out. Get it out of your hands, and you'll get feedback. Good, bad, whatever it may be, there'll be feedback, and it'll help to move the next step. So you might get some feedback, and maybe it's enough, maybe it's not enough, but it's something maybe that you can then help to translate, put into that charter, and then move that needle, send it back out. And almost I feel like some might threaten, okay, this is where we're at, this is where the project is headed, and then we'll be starting this soon. So maybe add a little bit more emphasis of I need your feedback or this is how it's going to be.
Yep, makes sense.
Melina?
Yeah, so I think on a couple of smaller projects, I've definitely used the process map just to really identify like all the key players and like all the actions that are happening. And then most of the projects I work on are for quality improvement, so like making things a little bit more efficient. So I love the process maps because I think it really helps identify like how many steps and like how many things might not be actually moving forward and maybe are going like a couple steps forward, then going back and then going again. So that one I feel like I use a lot to really see like where we can combine steps or make things just a little bit or cut out steps that aren't like necessarily needed. I've definitely used the 5 whys specifically for one of the projects I'm working on now to just kind of really get a better understanding on like what the challenges or issues are. I am trying to use the project charter because they're currently working on like a quality initiative and we have collected a bunch of data and we're trying to really narrow down like, okay, like what is the project going to be focusing on? I think right now there's a couple of different routes that we could go, but we don't want to take on the world. So trying to see like what's the best like next steps for our choices. And so working on some SMART goals and getting some deadlines so that way we can kind of move forward in that progress. And this was actually the first place that I had been introduced to a project charter. So thank you for sharing that tool.
Awesome. I'm really curious about process maps. How are you helping your team to, let's say, talk through or discuss which part of that process map there's an issue?
Yeah, so typically I use the process map after like 1 or 2 mapping meetings. So really understanding the workflow. So a lot of the projects I've been on, there's not a lot of documentation on like who are the key players and like what are the steps and like kind of what moves things along in that whole workflow. So just meeting with all the key players, understanding their pieces in it, and then the process map really helps to, I think, just simplify. Like
Mhm.
this is what's happening at this point, and then the next person steps in and this is happening. So I think it's after 1 or 2 mapping meetings, like getting all that information. Because most of the projects I'm on, I'm not like directly involved with that workflow or that process. So I got to learn a little bit before I could give us some kind of visual. And then when I usually bring it out to the team, they're able to be like, oh, we didn't know like it looked like that. I think the visuals are helpful.
I definitely recommend it. If you're not already with a process map, make sure you, again, it's a shared tool, right? It's a tool that you share with others. Everybody's contributing towards it. Mark somewhere on there when there's a special note. Sometimes we call them starbursts. Sometimes we can just put an arrow just to annotate. At this point in the process, while there's a certain step, you're saying that step may be a problem, and you're saying why. And that's a way of just capturing that information without just leaving just a process map that you maybe not easily defining where is that, is it a problem or not? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So when you say like justice, are you potentially putting in suggestions too as well in those different
You can do that, but it would be great if you actually had it up like on a wall, just with sticky notes or something, and others can actually take like a different color sticky and say, okay, step number 12, we got an issue with this. Step number 18, and actually put like a different color sticky there. But before you actually translate it into say PowerPoint or Visio or anything, but if you had a way where it was visible to the many and people can add to it, your team or the people doing the real work, and they can actually see it and actually say, does it really work like this? Yay, nay, and or this is where I have a problem, or this is where we have a pain point. I like to use pain points,
Yeah.
barriers or something. And then they just pop one, and you can just pop one a sticky with, this is what the pain point is. And that way, what you want to do, kind of like Roberto said a couple of meetings ago, how do you actually paint the most realistic picture of what's going on now? And then get the other team members to actually contribute to that. So it's not just you, but they're building this. This is what we believe happens now. And these are the things where we think we have barriers or pain points or issues or whatever. And then you can translate those down into your fishbone. But it's great to see them on a process map first.
I would, now that you're saying that, yes, I would typically put it in Visio, and then we do have to have a couple of rounds of edits because people are able to, I'll bring it back and then they're like, actually, like this may be, just things happen. But do you have any suggestions for applications that maybe are a little bit more editable for a team? Because I know Visio, like I could share it, but not everyone, I guess.
Yeah, not everybody's got Visio, and
Yeah.
Visio is hard to read sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole deal is if you can get them in a room or just have a central place where it's like up on a wall or something, not where patients or clients can see it, but someplace where only the team can actually see it and actually contribute to it. So it's easy to get to, and more importantly, it's easy to actually add to it. And then once it's like you got it 95 to 98%, like this is the stuff in there, then I would actually translate it to Visio and kind of pretty it up and put all the fancy arrows in and all that good stuff. Pre that, I like to just keep it up on the wall and make it as bloody and realistic as possible.
I see, let's see, I know Letty here. What was the other diagram called? Okay, you answered it. Great, driver diagram. Great. Anything else?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, thank you so much, Roberto. Great session. We're a little bit over, but if anybody has any questions, especially if you're working on a real project,
Yep.
please, please, please reach out to Roberto and myself and just say, hey, I have a question. How would you think about this? And that last storyboard depiction up there is kind of like, that's your map. And if you go by your map, it'll guide you 90% of the time. So thank you once again. Have a great rest of your day. And thank you, Roberto, for this just a wonderful session. And we'll look forward to talk to everybody in 2 weeks. Bye now.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you, Roberto. Great job as always. I love it. Can you send me those slides? I always ask after, but you're
Absolutely.
a wonderful speaker and you explain it so nice and clear. I just love listening to it.
Absolutely. I'll send it right away.
I just love it, Roberto. So keep up the great work, and it's very understandable and translatable.
Oh, thank you. I
And
know.
you're taking out all the heavy jargon and it's just like real life, which I absolutely love.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. I appreciate this is sometimes a little tedious to get to making these slides, but important forcing me to do
Yeah,
it.
it helps. They actually think them through and just say, okay, hey, for somebody who hasn't gone through this, how would they interpret this?
Yes.
Now, granted, it's another thing if you got like the quality team or a bunch of green belts already. So then you can, like jazz it up. Okay, hey, we're going to talk about, value stream mappings and roll through yield, and we're going to get a little fancy with, understanding variation.
Yeah. No, actually,
special and common cause, which we want to get there, but we want to, like, you gotta crawl a little bit.
yeah. No, funny you say that because I literally yesterday we have a new intern undergraduate who just started with us on Monday, and she knows nothing of this. And I showed her the curriculum because I was still a little lost with where I was heading with this session. And so I got her input. I was like, okay, this is what's happened so far. Does it make sense to do this? And she's like, yes, and walk through it. So it's great feedback.
That's good. That's good. And yesterday, what was her name? Manzi? You and Manzi?
Muncie.
Muncie.
Yeah.
Those were really good projects.
Oh yeah.
I said, man, these are tight.
Yeah.
This is like really good. I just said, well, I'm impressed. I said, I'm impressed. So you got a really good team, and they know their stuff. So that's really good.
Oh yeah. We're definitely working on PI over here, and I know there's some new folks in our department that I'm trying to train up and getting used to these tools. But yeah, no, we've got some people who are really strong with analytics and putting together these storyboards together, and it's exciting to see. Like Monsi is definitely a go-getter, and
oh my goodness, I said, man, you're good.
Yeah, she's really interested in moving the needle and doing more and more advanced statistics. So yeah, it's almost like I have to slow them down. Like, hold on, the system isn't.
But hey, that's a fun challenge.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey. Now we can actually look at comparative models almost.
Sure.
Okay. Well, especially out of those 3 scenarios. Okay, that's good. But now let's compare the models and look at some different variables.
Yeah. I know. Right?
Oh God, that's going to be next. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Well, anything I can help with them, Roberto? Nisha will send you guys the invite for the 29th.
Great.
We're going to. I'm trying to work with the fellows to get them, if nothing else, to change to all one storyboard. I'm just saying, well, Anna personally signed off on this storyboard cover now. So, she likes those little, what I call paw prints.
Okay.
So, the more you use the paw prints, guess what? Her brain is already trained to actually see the paw prints. So what she wants to see is paw prints, problem, what you did, the data, next steps.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah, I know there's some of them that have like quite a bit of maybe too much wording per slide, but I really did appreciate the storytelling that they had. Like it really showed that they knew the project well and was it wasn't just like this of information.
Yeah, it wasn't rote. Yeah, they really do the projects very well.
Yeah.
Very, very well. Which actually allows you to not use the slides. You can just okay,
Yeah.
hey, we're going to talk, and now I'm going to slip in the improvement pieces. But
Yeah.
unless you're the, like improvement audience, you want to see, why is this story important? That these changes really make a difference, and how's this benefiting the community and our system?
Okay.
And this is why it's tight, and this is how we're going to push it forward.
Awesome. No,
Yeah, okay.
it's great.
All right, Jimmy Bruno, take care, and I'll
Take
talk
care.
to you later.
All
Bye
right,
now.
bye.